Hi everyone, and welcome to this presentation about ADL in exercises. And it's also a guidance in a new annex to the NATO ADL Handbook. My name is Tohmas Ax. I'm a major in the Swedish Armed Forces, and I'm going to be one of two presenters today. The other presenter is my colleague, Major Niclas Ljung, and he will take the second part of this presentation. So on this slide you see a little bit about our agenda. So we will cover 4 bullets today. The first one is about the background to this project, and also a little bit about the deliverables, which ended up with an annex to NATO ADL Handbook and also a dashboard. Niclas will then take over and say something about the results from using ADL in exercises, and also a little bit about ADL and learning analytics in future exercises. So a little bit about the background. First I would like to say that this is a really condensed version of a 4-year-long project, and which all started with a discussion between Sweden and US. And the starting point was for the both of us, how do we make better use of our ADL capacity? Because we saw that we were using it in formal training, and to some extent also in informal training, but not so much in exercises. So we turned our eyes to see what can we do with ADL in exercises. So why exercises then? Well, it's because of its predefined scope. It has a very specific time frame with a clear start and a clear stop, and also clearly stated training objectives or exercise objectives. It ended up as a Swedish and US bilateral initiative, and also as a US DoD project called MADLEX. This in turn led to a task into the NATO training group, task group, individual training and educational developments. And there Sweden got the opportunity to be lead for that task within the NATO training group. So, as you all know, the ADL Handbook has been out and used for some years now, and we were talking about how do we best implement the knowledge about ADL in exercises. So the NTG, IT and ED decided to expand the handbook with an annex describing how to implement ADL in exercises. Here you see a picture of the table of content. So here is what you can find in the annex. It's 4 parts. The first one is the executive summary. It's a 1-pager which you can hand out to more or less anyone to get a hang of what's inside the annex. Second part is an introduction where you get a general idea of what to expect from the annex and how to get started. The main part of the annex is, of course, chapter 3 or part 3, the exercise framework. The exercise framework is a detailed description of scope and best practice in every step. The fourth and last is case studies, where we have described 3 different types of exercises. The Viking 18, the NATO standards exercise in Ukraine, and also a exercise called Bold Quest, which is a more experimental kind of exercise. The exercise planning and execution process follows 6 steps: strategic guidance, design, preparation, execution, evaluation, and analysis. ADL uses a similar framework of production, which is called ADI, analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. The two processes are complementary, as you can see in this diagram. The six-step exercise planning and execution process is based on 20 years of experience and was developed from NATO Directive 75-3 for use in major multinational distributed exercises. And also it is detailed in guidelines to methods in CACs. The ADL process for developing e-learning content is also detailed in the NATO ADL Handbook. This general developed planning process, including deliverables over time in the different steps, fits well into an ADL in exercise planning, execution, and evaluation process. Each of the 6 steps in the planning and execution cycle is driven by particular considerations, which in turn inform the subsequent step. In subsections 3.4 and 3.10 in this annex, you can see an explanation in detail how ADL can support each phase of the process. To maximize its value, ADL must be a central part of the exercise process from beginning to end. This figure illustrates the ideal timeline for the ADL deployment phases. It includes some of the most important applications of ADL resources for each step, including 2 critical elements of effective ADL support for the exercise, which is early access and delivery of the ADL platform and courses. This ADL timeline is intended to be aligned with that of the exercise planning, execution, and evaluation process, and the two always should be coordinated as the process actually unfolds. The diagram in this slide shows the relationship between the 6 steps in the exercise process and the corresponding use of ADL assets for each step. I would like you to bear in mind that this list of ADL resources are not exhaustive, but they illustrate the specific ways that ADL can aid and support each step of the exercise process. ADL makes the work of exercise planners and managers easier, more efficient, and more effective. One resource to familiarize exercise planners with the process of successful ADL integration is the e-learning course CACs method with ADL, and that's a result from the Annex project. This course can now be accessed via the site nordicadl.com, and you can click your way through to the course catalog and then on the CACs method with ADL. This concludes the first part of this presentation, and I will now hand over to my colleague for the second part. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tohmas. My name is Niclas Ljung, and I also represent the Swedish Armed Forces. I will continue the presentation by giving you one example of what integration of ADL into an exercise can look like in practice. The example I'm going to use is from the Swedish exercise Viking 22. The Vikings is a series of exercises that has been conducted every 3 or 4 years since 1999. It is a computer-aided exercise with more than 2,000 participants from about 50 different nations. It's a distributed exercise with 4 to 5 different remote sites internationally and 4 different sites within Sweden. The core part of our ADL effort in Viking 22 was to provide a solution that could be used in all phases of the exercise. For the pre-execution phase, we wanted to provide pre-training and also support the overall exercise planning process. During the exercise itself, we wanted to be able to provide micro-learning assets, checklist, guides, and so on. But also after execution, we wanted to provide a dashboard for analytics and learning analytics. For this particular exercise, it was mainly used by the Exeval team. And the solution itself consisted of a learning management system. We had added to that a scenario Wikipedia. Of course, we had a learning record store where we could store the data, and attached to that custom-built dashboards. All parts of the effort were Experience API compliant. This is what the Viking learning platform looked like. It includes several parts. As you can see, there are a number of introduction videos. We had one from the Swedish Yard, one from UN representative, one from NATO, and we're also glad that we could include one video from Ukraine, where Major General Salkotsan, among other things, it talks about the value of exercise like Viking, how they have benefited from that, and also the value of using ADL in a time of war. Up here you can see that we had a number of different ADL courses or e-learning courses. We also have a executive summary describing the scenario and the setup of the exercise. We also have a part where we have a scenario Wikipedia. We have the full scenario searchable, and we also have descriptions of all the main actors that are included in the exercise. These are the e-learning courses we used during the exercise. We had 2 different scenario courses as a complement to the scenario Wikipedia. We had one for the UN personnel and one for the NATO staff. There were also 2 courses for the main systems used during the exercise, namely the Citaware and the Exonaut software. There was also an instructional course describing the role of observer trainer mentors and the XCON function during the exercise. We had another course that describes the exercise planning process and how ADL can support the full planning cycle. The NATO LTEC 2 course is a micro-learning asset on how to write English in a NATO staff environment. And the exercise management course gives you an overview of how the exercise is conducted and also how the exercise is structured. We also added, late in the process, a course about cyber awareness as a contribution to a cyber concept development effort during the exercise. This is one of many possible views from the dashboard we used. The dashboard itself is a deliverable from the US-led project Maturing ADL and Exercises. It is open source and it's available at GitHub. It's a standalone solution that can handle many different kinds of systems and data streams. It can be tailored to and used by a range of different stakeholders, all the way from the individual participant up to the owner of the exercise. During this exercise, it was mainly used by the exercise evaluation team. The main data sources we used were, of course, the learning management system, the scenario Wikipedia, and we also got performance data from Exonaut, which makes it possible to compare pre-training results with actual performance during the exercise. The following are a number of items from the first impression report. Overall, you can say that we had very positive comments about the content provided and also the look and feel of the Viking learning platform. On the more negative side, you could say that ADL could largely have been used much more. More participants, it could be used more during the planning phase, and it could also be used more during the on-site pre-training. The main feedback we got was that we should have added even more resources such as battle wheels, SOPs, checklists, guides, and so on. The overall lessons learned from this exercise confirms actually the main themes from the Annex. Once again, we found it's important that ADL is integrated in all planning phases, that ADL should have a seat at the core planning team, and also the recommendation to have a designated ADL evaluator in the Exeval team to make sure that ADL aspects are included in the lessons learned and in the final exercise report. These bullets are a number of different areas where we would like to expand the ADL part of future exercises. There are, of course, more areas that could be added to the list, so there is still lots of work to be done. We regard this as an ongoing process where we think that the whole ADL community can and should contribute to this. So that was all we had for this presentation, and me and Thomas are looking forward to the discussion and Q&A session during the conference. Thank you for listening.